Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Daredevil episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and finally I'm back to bring you the latest in today's Daredevil episode review, and this is my review of Season 2, Episode 2, entitled Dogs to a Gunfight. Now, general thoughts on this episode. Good, solid episode. I especially love the pacing of this episode. I like how quickly the plot is progressing while still giving us the downtime to spend with our characters. For an example, I really love what happened with Matt in this episode. I like the fact that Matt spends the majority of the episode recuperating. This has clearly been the biggest, toughest fight he's had since Nobu in Season 1. I also like how we got to see sort of like the fear. You know, that scene when Matt goes deaf for a while and you see the fear and emotion on his face. I thought that was really well done. And because of everything else that was going on in the episode, we could actually see Matt sort of, you know, needing that downtime, needing to sort of step back, sort of slow down. I mean, this is right after his first encounter with the Punisher. I also really dig Foggy's involvement in the episode. You know, he's the one who finds Matt on the rooftop. And another thing I really like, I think this episode did a really good job at illustrating to us what Foggy's secondary role in the series, what his life is going to be like now that he knows Matt's secret. I think that was really well done in this episode. We get that now. I mean, even at the end of the episode, after, you know, the major blow up that happens with the DA trying to use Grotto as bait to catch the Punisher, and then of course Matt and the Punisher's second encounter, and how Foggy just, you know, runs into the middle of the action to try to figure out what happens to Matt. I mean, we can now see, like, wow, this is not going to be easy for Foggy. If this is what he's going to have to put up with day after day after day, and it could potentially lead to some conflict between him and Matt later on in the season. Foggy has pretty much been preaching the same thing he's been preaching since Season 1, and it's, you know, no pun intended, but it's kind of fallen on deaf ears because Matt has a job to do. So I think that was really well done. Now, since I brought up the DA, that may be definitely one of my favorite parts about this episode. I like their involvement in the story. I like that. I just dig how they create the perfect foil for Nelson and Murdock. And I think that that's needed because, of course, we know that Matt's going to have his adversaries. He's going to have his conflicts because, I mean, he is the star of our show and Daredevil is the focus of the show. But you gotta have that foil. You gotta have that antagonistic force for Matt, Foggy, and Karen outside of the major, you know, superhero crime fighting stuff. It adds the drama, it adds the tension, and it feels the world more. So having the DA be that party, have them sort of be this overwhelming obstacle that this small time firm is going to have to deal with this season, I think that's real good. And I also like how it's sort of replacing the organizations that Fisk had in Season 1, except it's from a legitimate standpoint. It's from a legal standpoint. You know, yeah, sure, they had to deal with dirty cops and whatnot in Season 1, but these people aren't dirty. They're just ruthless. Especially the DA. I mean, she's cutthroat. So it's like she's not necessarily breaking any laws, but, you know, you gotta having that hard ass in place like that. I dig that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they incorporate the DA and those characters throughout the rest of the season. Now, I will say my favorite part of the episode, I'm not gonna lie, as you can see from the thumbnail behind me, my favorite part of the episode, we get to spend a little bit more time with Frank in this episode, and that scene with him in the pawn shop with the pawn shop owner, man, I knew how that whole thing was going to, I knew how that was going to end, because granted, you know, you wouldn't think it. I mean, it's like, yeah, he's a dirty, you know, pawn shop dealer, but he's not necessarily a criminal yet. And then that last little bit of information we see, the last little bit of information we get right before Frank leaves, I'm like, oh, bro, you just signed your death warrant. I know how this is going to end. So I dug that. they are sort of building up slow with Frank. Most of the information we got about him in this episode actually came from the DA, because we found out that they've been investigating this guy for quite some time. And I like the fact that it's the investigators that coined the term the Punisher. I dig that, because it does reinforce the realistic tone that this series is going for. And the fact that, Frank, he's acquiring all of this equipment through like pawn shops and things of that nature. Once again, it's like this is sort of like a street level guerrilla warfare type setting. All of that is getting reinforced, and I'm totally digging it. So, for the most part, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on this episode. I want to thank you all for joining me. And I wanted to remind you guys, remember, I will be reviewing each episode of Daredevil individually throughout the season. This is going to be posted on the weekends for about the next 2 to 3 weeks or so. So please, if you haven't made it all the way through the season yet, feel free, drop by every time you knock out an episode. Come back, check out a review. If you've already seen season 2, by all means, come back, check out my reviews. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe if you like my review. If you want to see more of my stuff, please feel free to subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. So tomorrow, you guys will be getting my episode 3 review. Please feel free. Make sure you come back for that, because I'm going to go ahead and give you guys why I think episode 3 is the best episode of the season so far. You want to check out that. So, with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.